so Mark and Teresa, just quickly introduce yourselves. And then I think it's planned that you'll each have 15 minutes to talk, and then there'll be 30 minutes Q&A time at the end of this session. And the topic from memory is, just for everyone, Task Force 1 is sustainable growth strategies.
Okay.
So maybe Mark, do you want to kick off?
Sure. So about me, I'm the Impact Director at GetUp, which means I sit across all the campaign team areas. Before that, I was leading the economic fairness work, so working with people at ACTU and coordination on that. I have 7 years experience in digital organizing, both in Australia and the US. That experience both at GetUp and Move On, which is very similar to GetUp in the US. Worked on the 2012 Obama campaign with Move On, and also with the ACLU to help that sort of 90-year-old NGO add GetUp style campaigning to their work. I've trained and mentored a lot of digital campaigns, and I've had sort of lead fundraising roles at both GetUp and Move On, particularly during national elections.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Teresa?
Yes, I work with unions internationally for about 30 years and about 40 years in the trade union movement. I worked with Australian unions first in 96 actually, when Howard first came in, and spent about 4 or 5 years working a lot in a variety of different unions in Australia through the ACTU and the different, we basically ran workshops on organizing and campaigning for a number of years, and I was involved in 97 in the Wharfies strike on the Shit Hits the Fan committee, which was a great experience for me. And then I work now, like I said, mostly with unions in different parts of the world. I also work part-time with the Teamsters here in California, and the whole thing that's kind of driven my passion over the years is really how do you build sustainable, strong unions and keep them going.
Do you want to kick it off?
Well, they sound so they can't, so you just get them to do it.
Okay. All right, so do you guys want to kick off on your presentations? And is it okay if Mark, if you start first?
Yep, that's fine. So I will just try to share my screen, so let me know if that works okay.
Yep.
Are you guys seeing that?
Yep.
Right. The first slide we've covered in the introduction, so I'll get to skip over that quite quickly. Just wanted to start the presentation with a couple caveats about what I'll talk about and what I won't, just because of the 15-minute time limit. Make sure this is on manual. So I'm going to focus on growth of active members, what we would consider active members, as opposed to just getting new email addresses on the list. I think that's going to be a more relevant conversation for this group. I'm happy to talk about kind of the big funnel and how we would get a lot of kind of new email address sort of members at another time, or if people want to follow up with me. But I'll focus more on active member growth, how we kind of engage people to the point where they're taking action regularly with GetUp, or donating regularly, or becoming a recurring donor, which is the closest thing to a sort of dues paying union member. And I'm just going to focus today on how GetUp grows. I won't presume to address sort of how unions could use a GetUp model to grow, because that's a much, or how any other organization can use a GetUp and digital campaigning to grow is a very big question. I worked on it for over a year with the ACLU in the US, so that's a whole other topic. So I'm just going to talk about how we do what we do. The core to GetUp's approach to kind of growth and engagement is a member-focused theory of change. Members are sort of the hero of the story that we tell to them at any point in time. We tell a story that presents a theory of change with members at the center, and then a key part of what we do to kind of take people along with us and have them become more active members is we report back to them to let members know that their action had an impact, so that they come back and do more. And a lot of this presentation is going to be drilling down on what a theory of change is and how we communicate that to members. There's both a sort of science and art to our email writing and our communications with members. I'm going to focus more on the science part today, which is the theory of change kind of formula. The art is a bit more about our narratives and how we write emails and things like that, but I won't have time to really get into that today. The first part of a reader-focused theory of change is presenting the problem. You want to create a problem that you are asking people to tackle, and it can't be too big or too intractable. You have to break bigger problems down. We can't say that signing a petition is going to solve climate change, for instance, even though there are people who send emails like that. You have to talk about putting something like ARENA on the agenda, or dealing with a $1 billion call to arena funding, not talking about solving climate change. So you have to break big problems down. And the reason is to make people feel like they can have some kind of impact on it. And then you present your solution to the problem, and it has to be a practical, achievable solution. As I said, no petition is going to solve climate change, but if we know that a key senator or the Xenophon group is on the fence, we may have the power to influence how they vote in the Senate on arena funding. That's something that people could see themselves achieving. And then in any given sort of email or step in the campaign, we're usually not trying to achieve total victory. That's a longer path. It's more of a meaningful impact or progress towards victory. Again, this is all just breaking down larger problems into something that people feel like they can have some effect on. Christ-attunity is a phrase coined by Ben Brandel and also from The Simpsons. It's a real-world situation that is either a crisis about to unfold, or a bad thing that could happen, or the opportunity to potentially achieve something good. So the best theories of change have a potential bad outcome and a potential good outcome. And it has to be something that really matters to the audience. Example similar to one I just gave: if next senators vote for Turnbull's New Start cuts, vulnerable young people will be cut off from vital support. That's the bad thing. But if they vote against it, Turnbull's right-wing budget will be in tatters, and there'll be like a cascading effect on all the other cuts. It'll be a victory that will have even greater impact. So that's both a good or bad possibility if we can impact that. The ask is where theory of change usually falls down and is the hardest part of it when we talk to our members. How does what you are asking people to do lead to the solution? What's the connection? So you will often see emails other organizations write that will present a problem, present a solution, and then ask for money or ask you to sign a petition. But there's no connection that you can see in your mind between why signing a petition is going to make any difference, or why giving the money leads to the solution that you laid out. If you talk about we need to organize, tens of thousands of people, give us money, you haven't made the connection between why you need the money to organize those people. There might be a good reason, but not a about. So getting the ask right is about having a reader-focused theory of change. The member, the person that you're talking to, has to be the hero of the story. They're the one that makes the difference. That's the difference between us and a lot of NGOs. And it's a fine model, but it's a different model to have a relationship saying, we're the organization, we're going to go out and fix this thing, and we need you to support us with money or whatever it is so that we can go out and make the change happen. The way we engage people and get growth is putting them at the center of the change that we talk about. And then another key thing is the right moment. Why now? why is it important to take action today or this week as opposed to next month or next year? If you want to engage people who are very busy and have a choice to do something or not do something, it has to feel time bound and in the moment. This is an example, one of my favorite emails we did a little while ago because it's kind of an interesting moment, but, and Janet Albrechtsen has been a source of a lot of our fundraising, God bless her, in various columns done. So this was, you guys might remember, this was sort of early 2015. Janet blamed all of us Australians for our selfishness, and that's why the Abbott budget failed in 2014. So we use that to say, to talk about her argument that the reason for the failure of the Abbott budget is our extraordinary selfishness. Treasurer Joe Hockey joined the attack, and in red you can see highlighted our articulation of the problem. In fact, all over the right-wing media, we're getting attacked for the failure of Abbott's budget, treating us like children who can't handle reform. So that's the problem. We're getting blamed. We can't handle reform. The solution is laid out there in green. We're working with respected think tanks to commission modeling for a game-changing report with up to 10 fair policy alternatives to counter Mr. Abbott's austerity measures. That was a report that we funded that we commissioned Australians to do with policies on superannuation, negative gearing, capital gains. The CPSU joined us on that, as well as United Voice, and we think it's had a really great impact. And then the ask is there, kind of in the link in the blue. Click here to show the right-wing ideologues your commitment to creating a better, fairer budget by starting a recurring donation as a Get Up core member today. So that meant that there's almost like two things. The actual act of donating was in fact a response to the problem. It wasn't even just about the money going to the research. It was the fact that the problem we identified was they say we can't handle reform. And we're children and we're not grown-ups and they're the grown-ups in the room. So even the act of donating was rebutting Janet Albrechtsen's claim. So that was very tied to the moment. The next part is, I've talked a bit about what we do in an individual case, but to really bring people on board, it can't just be about a single moment. You have to have layers of theory of change. So there's a moment story, which is really that top part of the email, what's happening right now, the specific thing this action addresses. You're talking about progress, impact, a meaningful step, but usually not victory. But you also have to give members the broader campaign story. How does this fit into the bigger picture, the broader path to victory? And I won't get into this as much, but you also have to have, over the arc of your communications, a movement story. Who are we? Why do we even care about this? And that connects to values, common values, the values that we share as progressives. So you have to come back to those things. So it's all about taking people on a kind of telling people a bigger story. So you can see at the top of this next section of the email, same email, if we don't make the case to raise government revenue in the fairest way possible, we'll always be on the back foot, fighting cuts to everyday Australians, from 100K university degrees to GP co-payments. It's only a question of when and by how much we'll lose. So that was that's not about Janet Albrechtsen's column, right, and why we're pissed off about it this moment. That's the broader story of this. If we're constantly just on the defense trying to protect against cuts, we're just going to lose. We have to go on the front foot. We have to come up with our own ways to deal with revenue. So, question I often get: what's the difference between Get Up emails and spam? If we've done it right, it's a meta-narrative. If you get emails about 2014 budget, it shouldn't feel like random emails being sent by different people just on different subjects. Sign up petitions today, give us money the next week. You should be building a story. There's story arc, there's subplots, there's villains, there's secondary characters, and always your members are the hero of that journey. They're the Frodo. We're kind of like the Gandalf. Or an area, we're more the mentor or the guide, while they're the hero in that story. And villains are really key. Rupert Murdoch, favorite one for us. Big business. The story arc of a lot of our stuff in economic fairness was everyday Australians versus big business and corporate tax dodgers. And we have to have that consistent theme and meta-narrative throughout our campaign. So across a number of our economic fairness campaigns, you see that consistent theme. On Medicare, a free pass to coal pollution and big mining while charging Australians for getting sick. On New Start, $2,500 a year from a 24-year-old job seeker while companies are pocketing billions. On the budget plus the budget work, a budget that targets low-income Australians while big businesses afforded tax breaks. So you can see, even though these were all different campaigns, they all came back to a consistent theme, so that people felt part of a bigger story. You guys may have this phrase internally as well, but this is just in terms of getting people not just in the door, but becoming more engaged members, becoming regular donors. We talk about a ladder of engagement. You bring them in with something more simple, like signing a petition, and then you ask them to call their MP or to donate, to take offline action. It's the journey we tend to have from members, but it's the journey we tend to take on any given campaign as well. We want to kind of work up from easier to harder. And a big part of that, and what folks who do what I do in other organizations, we often fall into the trap of not doing well enough, is reporting back. And it's really, really key, because that closes the loop on the theory of change. You've given people a problem, presented a solution, told them how what they can do will have an impact on that in a given moment, and you've got to come back to them and say what happened, and show that they've had impact. So it's why people come back for the next action, and they move up the ladder and join different campaigns, because they said, Get Up told me if I took this action, I gave them this money, it would work, and it did work. So the next time Get Up tells me that there's something I can do about this, I believe them. You build up that trust over time. And that's what gets us core donors and active members. So we've traditionally invested a lot here, pouring thousands of dollars into video products, micro sites that maybe only 5,000 or 10,000 of our members will see, but we know they're the 5,000 to 10,000 that really matter, because they drive our work. And because members are really a finite resource, they could leave, we could lose them, they could stop opening emails, and also because we owe it to them. They're the ones who put in their time and their passion and commitment, and so we kind of owe it to them to tell them what happened. That's really what I have. I might briefly see if I can share an example of a report back. Not working. Cut that. So this is, there we go. This is a microsite we put together to report back on our budget work about November of 2014. So this took a fair amount of time and money to put together, but it was really key to let people know what they had done so far. How many people signed the petition. We talked about our calling program. Hey, there's Clive and Jackie. Yeah, I'll leave it there, but that's a whole microsite that you can take a look at, but that's how much we invest in reporting back.
All right, thanks for that, Mark. Teresa, do you want to kick off for 15 minutes before we move on to Q&A?
Okay. Just give me a minute and let's see if I can get the PowerPoint up here. There it goes. I think I do this first. Right. So there. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay. So I thought what I would do in 15 minutes is just talk a little bit about an example from South America that I've been involved in for the last 8 years or so. And it's a large international network of aviation workers. And I thought it would be useful for Australian labor leaders because I think so often you end up hearing from countries that have weaker labor movements than what you have. And I just feel very beholden, almost like your big brother to us. And I wanted to match it with some of the discussion with some of the unions that are stronger, that do have industrial demarcation like you do, that do have strong delegate structures and a very strong history of that. So I thought rather than talk about some of the organizing here in the US, I would actually talk about the South American stuff. So there's a little bit of a language thing here, but this is a map of our current network, and Australia's in there because it's, well, the airline is LATAM Airlines. It's the largest airline in South America. And ASU represents the airport workers in Sydney, so they've been involved in the development of the network as well. And you can see it covers 7 countries, 25 unions, 5 federations of unions, and this is kind of the layout of it. We started the network about, well, it was around 2006 when the unions first started getting together, just a little meeting between Argentinian flight attendants and Peruvian flight attendants and some Chileans as well. And it was maybe 10 people that would start sharing information because it's a large multinational company. And from there, it's grown to what it is now, and it's constantly growing. Now we're looking at the second largest company, Avianca, that there's been enough interest from the success of the LAN organizing to expand into Avianca as well. So I'll talk a little bit first just about some of the work that we're doing and what we're facing, and then I'll get into, I think, what some of the lessons are that might be useful. So this shows some of the membership growth, so the numbers can kind of speak for themselves. It only continues into 2013. I don't have the more current numbers, but it's guaranteed growth in all different sectors, and we cover all the different sectors in aviation, from pilots, mechanics, dispatchers, flight attendants, everybody. This is a picture of a strike in Chile, and I'm going to run through just a little bit about the issues that we're facing and some of the things that we're winning and losing, because I want you to see that what we're working with is exactly what you're talking about, trying to strengthen up young workers, precarious workers. It's where all of our workforces are going around the world, essentially. So the Land Peru Aviation Mechanics, we had a large contract campaign with them 2014. It was during the World Cup, and we utilized the World Cup to put pressure on the company. The workers hadn't had a wage increase for 10 years. They're paid half of the other workers, and all the new workers were being put on temporary contracts. During the campaign, there were 7 workers who were fired. It was intense. There was private detectives involved, a gun. One of the leaders was put in jail. We got him out of jail. And it really was either we were going to win and win everything, or we were going to lose and lose the entire union. And we ended up winning. We got 50 to 100% wage increases. Everybody was put onto full-term contracts, regular contracts. We got rid of performance pay, got folks back to work, and the union is stronger than ever and continuing to fight. Another example, LAN Argentina flight attendants. So in Argentina, LAN was a newcomer when we started organizing. They had fired the major union leaders. There was tremendous fear. People could not even come to meet together or come to the union hall or anything like that. And the union basically the union leaders felt that the workers were just too young, impossible to organize. There was no union recognition, no collective agreement, low wages, issues like fatigue, and the presence of another union as well. And that we also won. So let me just go back a minute. So we now have a collective agreement. We got union recognition. We did it through pressuring the company. We worked together with all the unions in the aviation sector in Argentina, and were able to stop the airport until they rehired some of the leaders and got a wage increase. And we got 35% in that first contract. They now have a full slate of delegates, and they're going to town. The other group, LAN Ecuador, just want to give another example. So there again, low pay, the bottom of the kind of category of lower paid countries with the social dumping. When we started to organize, they fired 80 union workers. They fired the founding president of the union, Jimena Lopez. No collective agreement, no union recognition. There we have recently won, just this last year, union recognition. The company is delaying like crazy. We've done a huge fight to get Jimena back at work, and we have not been successful in getting her back to work, but she's completely involved in our campaign. So I just wanted you to see some of these themes, and we lose some and we win some, but the strength of our network is really in the fighting back, and we are choosing carefully when to fight back and when to organize. So for example, I'm going to go back a slide here. So up until 2014, and during this time period, we were really focused on more building the base, getting to know each other, trusting each other internationally at the level that we needed to. And then 2014, when we first took on the company in a real aggressive international manner, we did that because we had the base with the mechanics that were prepared for anything and everything. So they spent 2 years building up their membership to the point where they could handle the firings and the craziness that was going to go on. So all of this is done, and I think this is important, very important for North American, European, Australian labor leaders to understand. All of this is done with no staff organizers. The leadership and the organizers are all workers. So it's coordinated by Dina Feller, who's down at the bottom left corner. She's been to Australia, and some of you might have met her. She's a flight attendant from Argentina. She was one of the original fired flight attendants. And then what we do is we actually train up every worker in LAN, every delegate in organizing and campaigning. So we don't run like why you should be in the union. We run the same curriculum that is run in Australia for union staff people and top leaders on just what are the organizing skills that you need. So it makes it very resource sustainable. So we have a budget that we've had for approximately the same the last 8 years, which is about 85,000 US, something like that. I'm the only one in the entire network that doesn't work for the company, and I work 1 day a month helping out, and my official title is mentor for Dina, who's the coordinator of the entire network. The way that we train folks up, like in this picture in the right upper left hand corner, you can see a whole bunch of folks. They're all flight attendants. The folks in the front are actually students in the flight attendant school, but there's very few LAN folks, because at that time we couldn't make contact with the LAN workers. They wouldn't talk to us. They would walk away from us as soon as there was any discussion of union or any presence of a union. This is one of the first meetings that we had at the Union Hall, and we did have, I think it was 4 LAN workers in this meeting. And what we did is we did a comparison of conditions and a education piece on duty time and kind of the legal structures around being a flight attendant and how you protect your license against what the company wants you to do, essentially. So the LAN folks were able to come, but everyone else is pretty much helping us to organize. So everyone else is in organizing training, because we use the unionized flight attendants from the other unionized companies to organize the LAN workers. That was the only way that we had to approach them. But it meant that it's completely sustainable for whatever time period it took, because we weren't running a campaign where we had to hire a certain number of staff people. It was just, okay, for as long as it takes, we need you to talk to every single LAN worker you possibly can ever have coffee with. And that's how we built it up. We had lists, we did all the usual kind of stuff. Then the other picture is from Colombia at the bottom, and these are the Colombian mechanics. And the flight attendants in Colombia were union. The woman in white up in the corner, Christina, is one of the coordinators for the Avianca network now. And she's a flight attendant. And basically the flight attendants were winning and organizing, and they then organized the mechanics. The mechanics, a few of them started talking to some of the flight attendants, and the flight attendants knew how to organize because they were organizing themselves and campaigning. And we were doing a lot of workshops on how to do organizing and campaigning. And so they reached out to the mechanics, and we organized all of the mechanics. And you can see the age of the workers is young as well. This is our methodology. It's the same methodology that we have for campaigns. So it's the strategic analysis of the company. It's how do you organize. It's the communication networks. We call them arbolitos. We have two main pieces that we use. One is the organizing manual of the ITF, which is just a little, the format is just like a little novel, a little booklet, but then attached to it are PowerPoint modules for each one of the chapters, and it runs through everything from mapping, list building, education, organizing committees, all that kind of stuff, how to predict what the employer's campaign is going to be. And we just run all workers through that. And we do it as part of planning what we're going to do to win campaigns in the company. And the same with the campaigning. So we have another booklet, that's the campaign booklet, and they're both the same curriculum that I was using in the mid-90s and 2000s in Australia, just that are very participatory, very kind of a mix between planning and education of how to do strategic stuff against the company. This is a slide just about what is organizing, because I think so often we use the same term for different things, and the way we're using it in this context is really in terms of building leadership from workers, participation, heavy on the education, heavy on collective class consciousness, which is another major similarity more between South America and Australia, and kind of a difference in particular with the US unions in particular. So, so this is a meeting of our network, an international meeting. Again, everybody works for LAN, everybody's an organizer, everybody's in, has just come out of workshops where we've planned, oh, we're going to go after safety issue with the mechanics, or delays centered around a strike in Argentina, or who knows what. But this is us organizing. It's very collective and very workshopped, I guess you would say. This is us in campaign mode, and all of our resources go directly into worker education, worker involvement. So we don't spend resources on campaigning, we don't spend resources on media. We get media, but it's because we've mobilized folks. So you'll see here there's like 3 pictures of folks leafleting airport, and we used leaflets that talked about flight delays and stuff. That was our strategic point at that point. We're kind of shifting our message right now because we've done that. We don't want to keep doing the same, you know, tactics over and over again. So right now we're doing safety, mechanic safety to passengers. And the leader from Paraguay is in one of the pictures doing leaflets. There's a leader from Peru. That's really where, again, the resources go. Below, you can see Sally and Pedro in the Brazilian airport. Sally was on her way to the World Cup, so we used her. We did not turn it down. And we got her quoted in a Brazilian newspaper about how afraid she was to fly with the potential mechanic strike and all the problems going on in Peru. And she was quoted as a passenger. So that was very useful to us. It was very strategic, but we don't put our resources into planning that kind of stuff. All of our resources go into what the workers were doing. So this is above is a picture of the Peru mechanics out on the street, mobilizing in Lima. Below right is just what we do a lot is we meet in small groups, we make plans, we decide who's going to do what when. So this is a group of the Argentinian flight attendants. Dina's on the left in the front. Veronica's the other person that was fired, that we got back to work. She's on the right. And then in the middle is a meme. I mean, we do professional materials, we do high quality, but the meme we got, actually ASU helped us with at the last minute. But recently, just to give you an example of how we work, with our message on safety, we did a survey that showed 80% of the mechanics are really worried about passenger safety right now because of changes that the company's making. And we knew that we had to get that message out to the media as well as through our usual method with the leafleting of the passengers. And so we just got all the leaders together, everybody met in Lima, and we had a 3-day workshop on how to do media stuff, how to do social media and that kind of thing. So that our thinking is that once folks are trained up, they're permanently in the workforce, they have the skills, and they just use them like crazy. So, and the level of participation increases because there's no one else to do the work. The expectation is that the workers will do it. The leadership in South America varies by different country and different union, but there's a very strong practice of getting union days where leaders are paid to have time off. And so we use that like crazy. In the US context, I also tend to lean very heavily towards getting folks, we call it lost time, where we may not get the company to pay. That's not really in our culture as much, but we do work really, really hard to get contractual language where we can get workers off for short and long periods of time, get them skilled up, and then they go back into the unit. And again, we've got a permanent workforce of organizers. In terms of research, and I don't know if you can see it because it's kind of blocked on my screen, but there's a little picture of blueberries over there. And that's another example I wanted to give, which is we don't do very much top-down research. When I first started with the network, we thought that we needed that. We still do it some, and we keep on top of the company like crazy. Whenever they make the slightest move, we know about it. But when we plan the strategy, we plan by where the workers are most involved and where we can build on that strength at the base, because that's where the real power is to win. And so we're looking at blueberries. We could look at seafood. We could look at flowers as we begin to think about cargo and how to pressure the company. But the reason the blueberries are there is because we have a group that's completely strong, that's completely with the union, 100% all trained up, in a part of Argentina where they grow the blueberries and they work in cargo with the blueberries. So it keeps us very close to the ground with everything. Research, media, everything is close to the ground. The next slide, what I did, and I'm talking a little bit fast because I think I'm going to my 15 minutes, but I wanted to make a list of ways that we avoid organizing. I think this is a really important list, and I've participated in everything on the list, and I just thought there's so many ways that our unions, we want to act like we're organizing, but in fact, many times we're not, and we're attempting to look like we're organizing. So one of the ways is to allocate a lot of resources to planning to organize rather than actually getting the resources to the base and doing the organizing. Another one that's really common around the world, I go to many of them, but it's organizing a conference for union leaders and staff, not for workers, not so much for delegates. A lot of times it's on the international or national level, and creating an organizing report of some sort. And I just talked about this, but assigning staff to research a company, doing industry leverage point research without building from where the workers are strong. So the disconnect from the research to the actual ground campaign, and you can spend a lot of resources on that stuff. Another one is subtly blaming others. So blaming our own members, workforce changes, whether people are young, what their cultural differences, migrants, free trade, precarious work, all of it. And it's really easy to kind of look and say, oh, that's impossible. But what we've actually found around the world is it doesn't matter whether folks are young, whether they're precarious or whatever. that folks will organize. It's the same organizing principles. It drives me crazy sometimes when we start, and I've been involved with some of this, where we start writing specific manuals on how to organize young people or how to organize precarious workers or something, when it's basically the same strategy, the same skills. It's just a different workforce. And especially being in the Asia Pacific region, you've got so many examples within your region of folks organizing precarious work. So as more and more of the Australian workforce ends up in that situation, which we're seeing everywhere, including Europe, I think you're kind of situated in a place where there's a lot of folks doing a lot of good organizing in that sector. Well, it's not even really a sector, that kind of group of folks. Anyway, because it's in all sectors. The other thing that we do sometimes is just ignore whole growing sectors of our industries because they're just too hard. And if we can learn how to do the organizing in a way where it's delegate based, it's worker based, then the resources allow you to sustain it for a long time. You're not pulled into having to have an immediate win, and you can go into the places that are hard. Here's another one, substituting community organizing for organizing workers. So sometimes we get drawn into, oh, we can't organize them at the workplace, or again, we think it's too hard, and we go into other movements. And I am totally on social movement organizing. The picture below is the mechanics again in Peru, but they're totally drawing on the flag. They're drawing on the whole thing of Peruvian workers being paid lower. They were drawing on a lot of social community organizing that's going on in Peru at the moment. More ways to avoid organizing. And this is a picture of Jimena. She's still fired, but she's very, very, very active in the Ecuadorian Union. I was just with her last week. She's mentoring the new leaders that are coming into the union at this point. So I think this is the most common thing, is we don't really involve delegates and workers in the organizing and campaign planning. We kind of do the plans, we do the organizing strategy, and then we kind of give it to them. And there's nothing more demobilizing and nothing more resource intensive as well as doing that. Planning campaigns that don't build union structures. So this is around some of the you know, you can run any campaign in a way that builds permanent structures, or you can run it in a way that doesn't. So if you think of a electoral campaign, for example, so you can continually every election go back and find new people who will volunteer on this particular campaign, or you could actually set up some sort of structure based in the neighborhoods amongst the voters, or based in permanent organizations in the neighborhoods where okay, I, Teresa, live on my block in Venice, California. I know my 10 neighbors, and I'm going to be the one that will actually cover them. And our job is to back the Teresa person up so that I have the skills to do that in an ongoing way. The other one is to focus on media and messaging while not really talking to and building relationships with workers. So again, it's a way where resources from the union can get drawn into that, and we want to be really good on the media. This is Jimena talking to the national media in Ecuador, but we don't want to do it outside of or in place of building the relationships with the workers. The fourth one is really common, which is attacking the union attacking the company when the leadership is ready or the union structures are ready, but not when the workers are ready. So patience, wait until folks are really ready to fight, because when the crap comes down, it comes down on the heads of the workers, not on the union leaders that planned the campaign. Focusing on recruitment instead of organizing. I think that's an obvious one. You know, we want to sign up the new members, but to really get solid new members in a way that's sustainable, that you can keep it if there's high turnover in the workforce, we need the permanent organization on the ground. Ignoring the organizing or campaigning history of your own union and your own movement. This is a really common one. If we don't know what's happened to our union and our movement in the past, it's really hard to imagine what's possible now. So if you don't really understand the attack in the US that separated our unions from socialist and left movements, it's really hard to understand where we're at now, or if you don't understand the award system, how can you imagine where you're headed in Australia now? So just knowing your own movement. And then this is my last slide. I'm going as fast as I can. And this is a picture from Santiago. So because we were building up the leadership with such attention and such time and energy into them, they just flew with it. So the Chileans just sponsored an international meeting of all of the flight attendants from different countries to come together, and they spent 4 days just comparing the labor conditions, because they needed to get into intense detail about everything from duty time to wages. And you can't just compare wages by numbers, because there's different costs of living, different levels of inflation in different countries. So this is them working, and these are just 3 things that I thought might be useful as you're looking at how to kind of grow sustainable unions. And the first one is what I've been talking about, is just build sustainable participatory union structures, so the structures last. The other is to plan collectively how to fight capital and to get a fair go for all, to really build a better society, but to plan that collectively, not a few of us. And then all the resources go directly into the workers to build relationships of trust, organizing and campaigning. And we've been fortunate in that we don't have many resources. When we first started this campaign, actually, we sent Dina to organizing school with one of the unions in the UK, just thinking that would kind of broaden out her skill base and could be something we could offer her as a new coordinator of the network. And basically, the union in the UK told her, it was the aviation union, and they told her that she would need 80 organizers to do anything within land, and she was completely crazy, that we were both crazy to kind of move forward with the level of resources that she had. And she came back and we talked about it, and we kind of went, okay, well, let's just try it. Let's see what we can do. And we've kind of operated from that premise. So that's my quick 15 minutes. I hope I didn't go too long.
Through to the speakers. So who's got the first question on the start?
And you could also come around if you like. Yep.
She talked about she doesn't have any paid organisers in their South American network. So can you talk about that kind of commitment they made in building their membership and developing their membership? Because that's something a bit advanced on my level.
Okay, so Teresa, the question was about for you in terms of not having paid organisers, and so I assume what were the structures
can you
or?
Talk about what kind of activities you did at the beginning in 2006 to build the strength of the individual members.
Yeah.
Yep.
As opposed to having a traditional union structure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, and we're still using the same methodology now because we have different levels of strength, right? So in some of the countries and some of the unions, we're in the same exact position that we were in Argentina in 2008. So I think what we do is we basically just invest heavily in education. It's not always the kind of education where we get everyone in the room. We do that twice a year at international meetings of all of the 7 countries and all of the unions and federations. And those meetings have grown like crazy from a smaller number to a very large number now. And at those meetings, we do a mix of planning. So we first just get a report from everybody, what their countries are up to, what their unions are up to. Then we plan out different campaigns. We do a lot of analysis, evaluation. And in the planning process, we're actually doing and teaching union skills. And sometimes we will label it as an education process, like we just did 2 days of real education with the campaign's manual that looked like real education. But when we broke into groups, we had the Colombian group were planning something with the flight attendants, the pilots were planning something in Argentina, and we had a third group of the Ecuadorians. So That's what our meetings look like. But then we have our coffees, right? Which is at the very beginning in Argentina, it was who would have coffee with us? What birthday parties could we get invited to? We held disco events. We did soccer, a lot of soccer. We had the unionized companies play soccer against the land companies. And then the job of the unionized soccer flight attendants, and it's all flight attendants at this point, their job at soccer was not just to have fun at soccer, but to try and get an opportunity to get to know the land flight attendants and just build bonds there. So, and then at the international level and national level, it's been similar, but it's more bringing the union leaders together and really building trust. We have a very high level of trust. We've developed a culture of that, and we have our fights, we have our disagreements, but we're overall able to work together. So that's how we won the power needed to get the flight attendants back to work, was really we formed, and the leaders in Argentina, out of the work that we were doing, formed a federation of all of the unions together that negotiated with land together over wages. And it was the first time they had done that, and it was extremely successful for all of the unions, and part of the demand was to get Dina back at work, and the other flight attendant had been fired. I don't know if that really answers your question. It's so simple, right? And it's so easy that it seems almost silly, but really it's just not being afraid to spend the time with the workers and the delegates. And we did the training with the unionized delegates at the beginning in Argentina with the flight attendants. So we had no workers that would talk to us. So we did trainings with the union delegates, and the first part of the training was, well, why should you care about what's happening in land, right? Your conditions are okay. So that was the beginning of it. And from there, it was like, who do you know in land? We had the lists, and we would just go through in different meetings, small groups. And if we have a small group, we're fine with it. We don't get fussed about it. We just work with whoever's in the room. Does that, I don't know if that helps or not.
Other questions?
James, sorry, it's a question around time frames, particularly because it's doing the traditional organising of what sort of time frame is invested and what's the patient mentioned.
So time frames in building capacity of the delegates?
Ah, okay. That's a good one. They're really, I mean, in the work I do in the US, it's different, right? But here in this network, there's really no time frames. So we're in it for the long haul. We sometimes have project money, you know, our little budget will be for 3 years at a time. And we just hope that we'll get renewed or find some other source of funding. And then we have some time frames that get created for us with fights with the company. But in terms of building relationships with the delegates and the workers, it just is never going to go away. So because there's not a heavy resource from the union or from the international structures, we're able to just stay in there forever. So it's like asking a worker, well, how long are you going to be friends with the folks in land? Well, you know, it just goes forever. So the delegates that are now the new delegates in land, where before no one could be a delegate, that group of delegates is so friggin' strong because they came up together, they share clothes with their kids together. I mean, it's a social connection as well as a union connection. I realized I didn't really emphasize, I can send by email or a link or something the 2 curriculums that we use. And they're online through the ITF, so I can just send those links. It's going back to the first question, but that might have been part of the first question. And that will give you the actual curriculum that we use in small meetings or in the coffee shop or whatever.
So my question was to Mark. The theory of change model that you work with makes your members the hero of the story and directly links the outcome to the action that they take. How does that work then in a collaborative model where it's not just your members who have achieved that change, but where there might have been a whole lot of people campaigning in that space, but it's necessary for you to feed back to your members that they are the heroes of that
that story?
Sure, yeah, really good question. I mean, I think that it depends on the particular case, but let's assuming we're in a situation where, we're working directly with allies. I mean, I think we just have to, I think members like us being part of a coalition. I think they recognize the strength in that. In most scenarios, we can talk about that in our emails and we'll pepper it in throughout. Depending, there's sometimes where allies don't, for various reasons, we can't talk about how we might be working with somebody. But assuming it's not one of those scenarios, I remember when we were working on the pulp mill campaign in Tasmania, particularly because we're not like a Tasmanian-based institution, we were talking about our work with the Wilderness Society or Environment Tasmania and other people. I don't think that sort of takes away the agency of the members. The point of them being the hero of the story isn't that there aren't other actors in the story. It's more about that Paul Lustig, the national director of Get Up, is not the hero of the story, nor am I as the impact director. That's more about the relationship between the members and us, not so much about the fact that there are other political actors with a really important part to play, like the Australia Institute who developed the policy work, which we mentioned in our emails, like the politicians themselves who end up having to do the legislation. So I think that's fine. It's not really inconsistent. I think one example I like to use is especially if you go back to 2008, the difference between Hillary Clinton and Obama emails are a classic example about it. Even now, Hillary is I'm with her, and it's very much the older style of political campaigning that would have been still used when Bill Clinton was running for president, as opposed to Obama or Bernie Sanders model where it's about the movement. So if you ever look at 2008 Obama campaign emails, it's all about how we can build the movement together. It's all about yes, we can. Whereas the Hillary style was more about what can you do to support Hillary to become president.
Yeah. I want to really say that I just think it's so important that we use the internet, we use social media, and our experience has been that all of our members use it. So we use it heavily during that same fight in Peru with the Land Peru mechanics. So we use WhatsApp. It's like an international texting thing where you can do groups of people. So we have conversations, especially when there's an immediate crisis, we can move people quickly. And yeah, at one point, I mean, I don't really personally like it that much, and both Dean and I are much more drawn to the face-to-face contact, but it's just the one and only way you can join people together quickly. So at one point, I mean, I never used Twitter, but I was on Twitter because we were doing delays of airplanes and stuff, and I had the Miami airport following me. I'm like, oh, this is great, So it's just, it's so important that we not separate out, I think, social media organizing from any part of the organizing.
Yeah, speaker.
Question for you, Mark. Does Get Up have activists in your campaign, i.e. your members recruit other members or activate other members, or does it all have to come back through the central Get Up machine?
That's a really good question. We're doing more of that. So in the campaign, and we've done a bit of it outside of the election campaign, but we have what I call wildfire campaigning. So that's where on the hospital's funding cuts, we realized that was much more powerful as a local issue. In fact, got some data working collaboratively with you guys and the nurses as well. And we're able to, rather than having a national petition to stop, $30 billion in hospital cuts, we had individual Get Up members start petitions about saving the hospitals cuts from the hospitals in their area. So they started the petition, they fronted the media, we gave them resources on how to write a media release. They recruited more people, they delivered the petition to their MP. So we are looking at models of what I would call distributed campaigning. It kind of sits somewhere in between mobilizing and organizing. It's not true organizing, but we are looking at ways to kind of give more ownership and leadership to individual campaign members. And I think, you know, I really want to do this, and we're talking about it right now, just so we keep it in-house, but working on that, like, consciously and doing more of that distributed campaigning in, say, 10 or 12 of the most marginal in the country. Because if we can build up that capacity in those areas, then when we're coming around to a federal election or even a state election, in some cases, those are the people who will be our booth captains, who will be handing out our how to vote cards. So I think that's actually something we haven't done a lot of, but are moving in that direction to build more on the ground activist leadership.
So we only have 2 minutes or so, but
my question's for Teresa. In South America, it's a network of unions, so that they are different unions. Do they run on similar democratic models? So how do they make decisions? Like, I'd be interested to see how they decide what course of action to take. Is it similar between states, or is there particular cultural differences between Chile and Argentina? Do you try and prescribe a model after you learn the successes that they have? That you roll out a model now because you see progress to me? Does that make sense?
I could hear most of the question, but not all.
Yeah, I'll come around. So
Sorry. Yeah, I know. I heard the part about the differences between the countries and the unions and the decision making, and then there was a part at the end I couldn't quite catch.
The last bit is, after you've learned from the successes, do you actually advocate a particular democratic model now that you roll out into some of your less mobilized areas?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so there's huge differences between the unions in culture, even within the same country, right? Because you've got pilots and then you've got ground staff and everything. And then we've got 2 languages, and each country has a different culture. So when we started, the Argentinians didn't trust the Chileans. The very first meeting we had was only Argentina and Chile, and there was massive suspicion because the Argentinians have a very strong labor structure and strong unions and industrial unions and very militant. The Chileans are in the headquarters company, and they're under Pinochet era labor laws. The company is a Pinochet company that he privatized. So they're in a completely different arena. So the Argentinians thought the Chileans, to be totally stereotypical, had sold out and were weak and silly. And the Chileans, to be stereotypical, thought the Argentinians were arrogant. So what we did is we just shared information, and we got down into nitty gritty of what happens when someone's fired. We compared structures and stuff, and that's when it started to shift. And there was more respect from the Argentinians because they began to understand what the Chileans were facing in terms of lack of labor protection, very right-wing stuff. And so the decision making, the decisions are made within the structures of the unions. The network does not make decisions. So the network pulls together the unions twice a year, and we make plans that people want to act on. So we're not trying to substitute in any way whatsoever for the democratic structures of the unions. In terms of what we recommend, we're very, very heavy on member participation. So both Dina and I will just, whatever problems are going on, like we come down to the basics, right? So it's the communication networks. We call them arbolitos, little trees of one person talking to other people. Do you have a structure like that? Well, you don't. Well, let's help you. Let's get together some workers. Let's start the communications. When can you get together? Okay, well, Dina can't be there. We'll get a flight attendant from this country to come and meet with you and sit down with you for a couple days and your workers to develop the program. So we very much advocate activity at the base as a way to win campaigns, but we're not advocating any sort of decision-making process, if that makes any sense. the Argentinian unions, from working together in this way, did set together their own federation, and other unions in other countries have worked together more in their own national countries and have formed different federations and different ways of working together. And then some of the unions have also expanded so that they're representing more types of workers rather than being smaller unions. So those things have happened as part of the process. But we've tried to keep the network itself very action-oriented, very campaign-oriented, very organizing-oriented, and there's no, the meetings are run more like a workshop would be run. There's not like an elected head of the network. We have Dina as the coordinator, and she facilitates the workshops. And everyone kind of listens, and we manage to get along because we have the fight ahead of us. You know how when you're in a big battle and, you know, all the unions in Australia agree that we're fighting the fight of the MUA at one time, and we just all fall in. It's more like that.
All right, I think that's it, Julie. Just thanks Teresa and Mark for the contribution. Thank you guys very much for your presentation. We really enjoyed the figures and stuff. So thank you very much.
Thank you.